The black sedan pulled up at midnight. Chioma watched from her window as 3 men in dark suits emerged, their movements precise and threatening. They weren't Min-Jun's people. She'd learned to recognize a security team by now, the way they carried themselves, the specific vehicles they drove. These men were different. Dangerous. Her phone buzzed. A single text from an unknown number. "Don't go outside. I'm sending someone." She didn't need to ask who it was from. Kang Min-Jun had just put himself between her and whatever darkness was coming. But protection came with a price. And as Chioma was about to discover, the Mafia King's world didn't just touch her life, it consumed it entirely. When the choice came between running for safety or staying for something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure, Chioma realized she'd already made her decision. She'd stopped running the moment she looked into Min-Jun's eyes and saw the lonely, guarded man beneath the monster everyone else feared. The question wasn't whether she'd stay. It was whether either of them would survive what came next. Part 2. Where ice melts, fire burns, and love becomes the most dangerous weapon of all. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications. This conclusion will leave you breathless. Life the Safe House was nothing like Min-Jun's mansion. It was a modest apartment in Gangnam. Expensive but unremarkable, the kind of place that wealthy young professionals lived without drawing attention. Yoon had driven her there at 2 in the morning after Min-Jun's security team had handled the situation outside her Gazawan. Chioma didn't ask what handled meant. She was learning the language of Min-Jun's world. The careful euphemisms that let everyone pretend violence wasn't constantly lurking beneath the surface of every conversation. "You'll stay here until we've identified the leak," Yoon had explained, handing her a key card. "The apartment is stocked with everything you need. Don't leave without security escort. Don't contact anyone from your previous. If you need something, there's a phone on the kitchen counter that connects directly to our team." "For how long?" Chioma had asked. Yoon's expression had been grim. "As long as it takes." That had been 4 days ago. Now Chioma sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching Seoul's lights sparkle against the night sky, feeling like a bird in a very expensive cage. The apartment was beautiful, all modern furniture and artistic touches, but it was still a cage. She couldn't work her other jobs, couldn't see Mrs. Park, couldn't even call her mother without using the monitored phone line that she knew was being recorded. All because she'd been unlucky enough to catch the attention of a man whose enemies saw everyone around him as potential targets. The lock beeped, and Chioma tensed before she recognized the specific pattern. Min-Jun's personal code. He was the only one besides Yoon who had access to the apartment. He entered quietly, dressed in his usual black, but there was something different about him tonight. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly disheveled, and there was a cut above his right eyebrow that looked fresh. "You're hurt," Chioma said, standing. Min-Jun touched the cut absently. "It's nothing. Sit down. I'll get the first aid kit." She'd found it under the bathroom sink days ago. Of course a safe house would be stocked with medical supplies. "I don't need." "Sit down." Chioma's voice was firm, and to her surprise, Min-Jun actually listened. He lowered himself onto the couch, watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes as she retrieved the kit. She sat beside him and gently tilted his face toward the light. The cut wasn't deep, but it was still bleeding. "What happened?" "We found the leak," Min-Jun said quietly. "He didn't come quietly." Chioma's hands paused for just a moment before she continued cleaning the wound. "Is he dead? Does it matter?" "I suppose not." She applied antiseptic, and Min-Jun didn't even flinch. "So I can go home now?" "No." Chioma pulled back to look at him. "You said once you found the leak. There are complications." Min-Jun's jaw tightened. "He sold information to the Kwon family. They know about you now. They know you're someone I've taken an interest in protecting." The way he hesitated over those words made Chioma's pulse quicken. "And that's a problem because I don't protect people. I don't show interest. I don't do anything that could be perceived as emotional attachment." Min-Jun's gaze was intense. "In my world, that kind of weakness gets people killed." "So I'm a weakness?" Chioma's voice came out sharper than she intended. "You're a complication," Min-Jun corrected, but there was something in his eyes that made the word feel like an endearment. "The Kwon family will use any perceived vulnerability to strike at me. Right now, they think you matter. Which means they'll try to use you. Do I? Chioma asked softly. Matter? The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Min-Jun reached up slowly and took her wrist, his thumb pressing against her pulse point. Your heart is racing, he observed. You're avoiding the question. Yes, Min-Jun said finally. To both. Chioma should pull away, should establish boundaries, should remember that this man was dangerous, that his world was violence and calculated cruelty, that getting close to him was like embracing a blade. Instead, she placed her hand over his. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. But Min-Jun didn't pull away. Everyone else is. Everyone else doesn't know you read Shinhua Chabi and make notes in the margins. Everyone else doesn't see the way you look when you think no one's watching, like you're exhausted from holding up a sky that everyone expects you to carry alone. Something cracked in Min-Jun's expression. For just a moment, the ice melted, and Chioma saw the man beneath, lonely, burdened, starving for a connection he denied himself for years. You see too much, he whispered. You hide too much, she countered. Min-Jun's hand came up to cup her face, his touch surprisingly gentle for someone with so much blood on his hands. If I do this, if I let you in, there's no going back. My enemies will never stop hunting you. My world will consume yours. You'll lose the freedom to be ordinary, to be invisible. I've never been invisible, Chioma said. Not here. Not anywhere. Black woman in Seoul. I'm a spectacle everywhere I go. At least with you, I'd be seen for who I actually am. And who are you? I'm still figuring that out. She leaned into his touch. But I know I'm tired of running. From bill collectors, from loneliness, from the possibility of wanting something, someone who might actually want me back. Min-Jun's control, that famous ice-cold restraint, finally shattered. He pulled her closer and kissed her with a desperate intensity that spoke of years of denying himself any softness, any warmth, any human connection that might make him vulnerable. Chioma kissed him back with equal fervor, tasting danger and desire and the reckless thrill of choosing something wildly improbable over something safe and sensible. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min-Jun rested his forehead against hers. This is a mistake, he said, but his arms tightened around her. Probably, Chioma agreed. Are you going to let me go? No. The word was fierce, possessive. I've built an empire by being ruthless and emotionless. But with you, I'm discovering I'm selfish enough to keep what I want, even if it puts you in danger. Then we're both making mistakes together. Chioma smiled against his lips. At least we'll have company. The next morning, Chioma woke in Min-Jun's arms, still on the couch, both of them fully clothed, having fallen asleep wrapped around each other like they were afraid to let go. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and for the first time in days, she felt something other than anxious dread. Min-Jun stirred, his eyes opening to focus on her immediately. For a moment, he looked almost peaceful. Then reality reasserted itself, and she watched him mentally catalog threats, assess vulnerabilities, plan contingencies. Stop it, she murmured, tracing the tension in his jaw. Stop what? Treating me like a problem to be solved. I can see your brain working. You're already figuring out how to protect me, control the situation, minimize risk. Min-Jun caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. That's what I do. I control situations before they control me. You can't control everything. I can try. He sat up, pulling her with him. The Kwan family won't act immediately. They'll watch, wait, look for the best opportunity to strike. But they will strike. So what do we do? We. Min-Jun's eyebrow rose. You kissed me. You said you weren't letting me go. That means I'm part of this now, whatever this is. Chioma met his gaze steadily. So stop trying to protect me from information and start treating me like a partner. Min-Jun studied her for a long moment, and she could see him warring with instincts that told him to keep her in the dark, keep her safe through ignorance. The Kwan family runs most of the underground gambling operations in Seoul, he said finally. We've been in conflict for years over territory. 6 months ago, they made a move that cost me significant resources and 3 good men. I retaliated. It's been escalating ever since. And now they think I'm your weakness, so they'll use me to hurt you. Yes. Chioma considered this. Unless we use their assumption against them. Min-Jun's eyes sharpened with interest. Explain. They think I'm a weak point. Some naive girl you've gotten attached to. What if we let them think that? Let them believe I'm an easy target, but instead of making me vulnerable, you use me as bait to draw them out. Absolutely not. Min-Jun's voice was hard. I'm not using you as bait. Why not? If your security is as good as you claim. Because if I'm wrong, if there's even a 1% chance something goes wrong, you die. And I'm not willing to accept those odds. The fierce protectiveness in his voice made Chioma's heart clench. Min-Jun. No. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. We'll find another way. I'll increase security, eliminate Kwan's key people one by one until he has no choice but to negotiate peace. How many people will die while you do that? Min-Jun turned, his expression cold. As many as necessary. That's not a solution. That's an escalation. Chioma rose to face him. And eventually, someone will get lucky. Someone will get past your security. Someone will hurt me despite everything you do to prevent it. At least my way, we control the circumstances. Your way puts you directly in danger. I'm already in danger. Hiding me in a safe house doesn't change that. It just makes me a passive victim instead of an active participant. Chioma crossed to him, taking his hands. You said I see too much. Well, I see a man who's been carrying everything alone for so long that he's forgotten how to share the burden. Let me help. Min-Jun's jaw worked as he struggled with the concept. Finally, he pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. If anything happens to you, it won't, because you're very good at what you do, and I'm tougher than I look. Chioma pulled back to meet his eyes. Trust me. I don't trust anyone. Then start. She smiled. What's the worst that could happen? You could die horribly, and I'd burn the entire city down in revenge, Min-Jun said flatly. Well, when you put it like that. Chioma laughed despite the morbid statement. Come on, let's plan this properly. If we're going to do something reckless, we should at least be smart about it. 3 days later, Chioma walked through Hongdae's crowded streets, outwardly casual but hyper-aware of a security detail that Min-Jun had positioned throughout the area. She couldn't see them, but she knew they were there, Yoon somewhere close, at least 4 other trained operatives in strategic positions, and Min-Jun himself watching through the security cameras that his team had temporarily hacked. The plan was simple: make herself visible, vulnerable, and too tempting a target to resist. Let the Kwan family make their move, and ensure that when they did, Min-Jun's people would be ready. Chioma's phone buzzed. A text from Min-Jun. The car is circling. 2 men inside. Don't acknowledge this message. Her heart rate spiked, but she kept walking casually, pretending to window shop. She caught her reflection in the glass, a black sedan moving slowly down the street, keeping pace with her. Another text. Keep walking toward the subway entrance. Yoon will intercept. Chioma followed instructions, moving through the crowd with practiced ease. She'd almost reached the subway stairs when someone grabbed her arm. Miss Okonkwo, a male voice said in accented English. Please come with us. We just want to talk. She turned to find 2 men flanking her, both trying to look casual, but their grips were firm, their expressions brooking no argument. I don't know you, Chioma said loudly enough that nearby pedestrians glanced over. We're friends of your employer. He's asked us to bring you to him. The lie was smooth, but Chioma had been coached for this. If Mr. Kang wanted to see me, he'd send you. She tried to pull away. Let go of me. Don't make a scene. The man's grip tightened painfully. Just come quietly, and no one gets hurt. Everything happened in seconds. Yoon appeared from the crowd like a ghost, his hand gripping the first man's wrist with enough force that Chioma heard bones creak. The second man reached inside his jacket, going for a weapon, but another of Min-Jun's team materialized behind him, pressing something into his back that made him freeze. Gentlemen, Yoon said pleasantly in Korean, though his eyes were deadly. Mr. Kang sends his regards. The fight that erupted was brief and brutal. Yoon moved with lethal efficiency, disarming and disabling the first man in 3 moves. The second tried to run, but was intercepted by 2 more of Min-Jun's security team. Within 30 seconds, both Kwan family operatives were on the ground, being zip-tied and hauled into an unmarked van that had appeared seemingly from nowhere. Yoon turned to Chioma, his expression carefully neutral. Are you hurt? No. They barely touched me. Chioma's hands were shaking with adrenaline, but she was surprised to find she wasn't scared, just exhilarated that the plan had worked. Good. Let's go. Yoon guided her toward a different vehicle, Min-Jun's personal car, with darkly tinted windows. The door opened, and Min-Jun pulled her inside with barely controlled urgency. Before she could speak, he was running his hands over her arms, checking for injuries, his face tight with an emotion she'd never seen from him before, fear. I'm fine, she said softly. Everything went exactly as planned. They touched you. Min-Jun's voice was rough. They put their hands on you. For less than 10 seconds before Yoon handled it, Chioma caught his face, forcing him to look at her. I'm okay. We're okay. And now you have exactly what you wanted. 2 of Kwan's men who are going to tell you everything you need to know. Min-Jun's control was fraying. She could see it in the tension of his shoulders, the barely suppressed violence in his eyes. When I watched them grab you, He stopped, seeming to struggle with words he'd probably never said before. I've never felt fear like that. Pure, overwhelming terror that I'd miscalculated and you'd pay the price for my arrogance. But you didn't miscalculate. Your plan worked perfectly. Chioma pressed closer to him. I told you to trust me. I trust you, Min-Jun said fiercely. It's the rest of the world I don't trust. He kissed her then, rough and desperate, tasting of relief and possessiveness. Chioma melted into it, understanding that this was how Kang Min-Jun expressed emotions he had no other language for. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. You make me weak, he whispered. I've built everything on being untouchable, and you walk into my life and shatter every defense I've spent years constructing. Maybe weakness isn't always a bad thing, Chioma suggested. Maybe caring about someone, makes you stronger because now you have something worth protecting. Or it makes me vulnerable to being destroyed. Only if you lose. She smiled, and something tells me Kang Min-Jun doesn't lose often. Never, he corrected. I never lose. The interrogation of Kwan's men took place in a location Chioma wasn't privy to, and she was grateful for that small mercy. She didn't need to witness that particular aspect of Min-Jun's world. But she saw the results 2 days later when Min-Jun returned to the safe house with a look of grim satisfaction. It's done, he said without preamble. Kwan has agreed to a meeting. Neutral territory, both sides unarmed, witnesses from the other families present. He's negotiating. Chioma felt a wave of relief. So this is over? Not quite. Min-Jun poured himself a drink, expensive whiskey that probably cost more than her monthly rent used to. He wants to see you. Me? Why? Because he wants to confirm that you're real. That I've actually developed an attachment to someone, that this isn't some elaborate trick. Min-Jun's expression was carefully neutral. He wants to verify his intelligence before he commits to peace talks. Chioma processed this. And if I refuse, then he assumes we're running a game, and the violence continues. Min-Jun set down his glass. But I won't force you. If you don't want to meet him, we'll find another way. What would I have to do? Attend a dinner. Sit beside me. Act like someone I care about, which shouldn't be difficult, since it's true. A ghost of a smile crossed his features. Endure Kwan's posturing and veiled threats. Smile politely, and let him convince himself that he's found my weakness. While you and he negotiate whatever it is crime bosses negotiate. Territory, tribute, non-aggression terms. Min-Jun shrugged. The usual. Will I be safe? I'll have 30 armed men surrounding the restaurant, and I'll be at your side the entire time. Min-Jun crossed to her, tilting her chin up. But I can't promise there's no risk. Kwan is unstable and ambitious. He might see this meeting as an opportunity to eliminate us both. Then why have a meeting at all? Because the alternative is war, and war is expensive, unpredictable, and bloody. Min-Jun's thumb traced her lower lip. I've fought enough wars. If there's a chance to end this without more casualties, I have to take it. Chioma could see the weight of leadership in his eyes, the calculations, the contingencies, the burden of making decisions that affected dozens of lives beyond just their own. Okay, she said. I'll do it. You're sure? No. But I trust you to keep me safe. She smiled wryly. And honestly, after everything, I'm curious to meet the man who's been trying to kill us. He's not impressive, Min-Jun said flatly. Just ambitious and ruthless, the worst combination. Sounds like someone else I know, Chioma teased. I'm calculating and ruthless, Min-Jun corrected. There's a difference. If you say so. She kissed him softly. When is this dinner? Tomorrow night. Yoon will bring appropriate clothing. Min-Jun pulled her closer, and she could feel the tension in his body. Stay close to me the entire time. Don't accept anything to eat or drink that I haven't tested first. Don't go anywhere without me or Yoon. And if anything feels wrong, if your instincts scream danger, you tell me immediately. You're worried. I'm always worried where you're concerned. He pressed a kiss to her temple. You've become my greatest weakness, Chioma Okonkwo. And in my world, that's the most dangerous thing I could allow. Then maybe it's time to change your world, she suggested. Min-Jun's laugh was soft and sad. If only it were that simple. The restaurant was a statement in understated luxury. Traditional Korean architecture meets modern elegance, located in an exclusive area where privacy was guaranteed and questions were never asked. Chioma walked in beside Min-Jun, wearing a dress that Yoon had delivered. Deep emerald silk that fit perfectly and cost more than her entire wardrobe back home. Min-Jun cut an imposing figure in a tailored black suit, his hand resting possessively at the small of her back as they were escorted to a private room. She could feel eyes watching them, assessing the black woman at the Mafia king's side like she was a puzzle that didn't fit the expected picture. Let them look, Chioma thought. She'd been stared at her entire time in Seoul. At least tonight, she was stared at as someone powerful, someone under Kang Min-Jun's protection. The private room was elegant and intimate, with a low table and cushioned seating. Already present was a man in his early 50s, sharp-featured and expensively dressed, flanked by two younger men who radiated barely controlled violence. Hongdae. Chioma recognized him from the briefing Min-Jun had given her, one of the old-guard crime bosses who resented Min-Jun's rapid rise to power and modern methods. Kang Min-Jun, Kwon said, not rising. Punctual as always. Hongdae. Min-Jun's voice was perfectly neutral as he guided Chioma to sit beside him. Thank you for agreeing to meet. How could I refuse such an intriguing invitation? Kwon's eyes fixed on Chioma with undisguised curiosity. And this must be the woman everyone's been talking about. The African girl who somehow captured the attention of Seoul's most notorious ice king. Her name is Chioma Okonkwo, Min-Jun said flatly. And you'll speak to her with respect. Or what? You'll start another war. Kwon smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That's why we're here, isn't it? Because you've finally found something you care about more than revenge. We're here because continued conflict benefits neither of us, Min-Jun corrected. But yes, priorities have shifted. Kwon turned his attention fully to Chioma, and she felt the weight of his assessment, calculating, predatory, looking for weaknesses. Tell me, Miss Okonkwo, what does a young woman like you see in a man like Kang? The money? The power? Or do you simply enjoy danger? I see a man, Chioma said calmly, meeting his gaze. Not the reputation, not the empire. Just a man who's more than what everyone assumes he is. How romantic! Kwon's tone was mocking. And naive. Do you know how many people this man has killed? How many lives he's ruined building his empire? Do you want me to judge him while ignoring that you've done exactly the same? Chioma replied evenly. You're both in the same business, Mr. Kwon. The only difference is Min-Jun doesn't pretend to be something he's not. Kwon's expression hardened. Clever tongue. I can see why he's interested. He turned back to Min-Jun, but cleverness won't protect her if our negotiations fail. They won't fail, Min-Jun said, his voice carrying an edge of threat. Because we both understand that escalation serves no one's interests. The dinner proceeded with careful verbal sparring, both men negotiating territory, percentages, and boundaries while maintaining a veneer of civility. Chioma stayed quiet, observing the dynamics, the power plays masked as polite conversation. She was learning that Min-Jun's world operated on respect and fear in equal measure. Every word was weighted, every gesture calculated. This wasn't just a business negotiation, it was theater, with both sides performing for an invisible audience of subordinates and rivals who would judge whether they'd shown strength or weakness. As the meal concluded, Kwon set down his cup with deliberate care. I agree to your terms. The Eastern Territories remain yours, and we'll establish a joint venture for the port operations. Profits split 60-40 in your favor. 70-30, Min-Jun countered. 65-35, and I guarantee none of my people will touch your interests, including her. Kwon gestured toward Chioma. Done. Min-Jun extended his hand, and they shook, sealing an agreement that likely had no written contract but was more binding than any legal document. As they prepared to leave, Kwon stopped them at the door. A word of advice, Kang. In our world, the things we care about become weapons our enemies use against us. That girl makes you vulnerable. I hope you're prepared for what that means. I am, Min-Jun said coldly, and I hope you're prepared for what will happen if anyone tests that vulnerability. In the car, Chioma finally released the breath she'd been holding. That was terrifying. You were perfect. Min-Jun pulled her close. Kwon expected you to be scared, intimidated. Instead, you met him as an equal. He respects that. He also threatened me. No, he warned me. There's a difference. Min-Jun's arms tightened around her. But the agreement holds. You're under my protection, recognized by all the families. No one will touch you without declaring war on me. Is this what your life is always like? Constant negotiations and veiled threats, and everyone looking for weaknesses. Yes. Min-Jun pressed a kiss to her hair. Which is why what I feel for you is so dangerous. You're not just a weakness, you're the weakness. The one thing that could destroy everything I've built. Do you regret it? Chioma asked quietly. Letting me in. Every rational part of me says I should. Min-Jun tilted her face up to meet his gaze. But regret implies I wish things were different. And I don't. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing something for myself. Not for the empire, not for power, but because I want it. Because I want you. Chioma kissed him, soft and sweet, tasting the truth in his words. Then we'll figure it out. Together. Together, Min-Jun agreed, and the words sounded like a promise. 2 months later, Chioma stood in Min-Jun's study. Their study now, sorting through correspondence while he worked at his desk. She'd moved into the mansion officially, her tiny Gazawan room a distant memory. She no longer cleaned. Instead, she'd become something between a partner and an advisor, using her international relations degree to help Min-Jun navigate complex negotiations and expand legitimate business ventures. It wasn't the career she'd imagined when she first came to Seoul, but it was hers. She'd found a place in a world that hadn't wanted her, carved out space at the side of a man who'd never believed he could share his life with anyone. There's a shipment arriving from Lagos next week, Min-Jun said without looking up from his computer. I've arranged for it to be expedited through customs. Chioma glanced at him, confused. Why would you? Because your mother mentioned in her last call that she missed certain foods from home. I had you arrange for a supplier. Min-Jun finally looked up, his expression soft in the way that was only ever directed at her. Consider it an early birthday present. My birthday isn't for 3 months. Then consider it me spoiling the woman I love. The word hung in the air between them, love. Min-Jun had never said it before, had avoided the term like it was dangerous. Which, in his world, it absolutely was. Chioma set down the papers and crossed to him, perching on the edge of his desk. You love me. Is that surprising? Min-Jun pulled her into his lap. I've rearranged my entire life around you. I've negotiated peace with enemies I'd rather destroy. I lie awake at night planning security measures and contingencies to keep you safe. If that's not love, I don't know what is. Most people just say the words, Chioma teased, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I'm not most people. Min-Jun cupped her face. I'm a man who spent years believing he couldn't afford emotions, couldn't risk attachments. And then you walked into my house with fire in your eyes and exhaustion in your bones, and you didn't see a monster. You saw me. I love you too, Chioma whispered. Even though you're terrible at expressing emotions, and you solve too many problems with violence, and you make me live in a fortress surrounded by armed guards. I'm working on the emotional expression, Min-Jun said dryly. The rest is non-negotiable. I wouldn't want you any other way. She kissed him softly. Well, maybe slightly less paranoid about security. Absolutely not. You're the most valuable thing I possess. I'm not taking chances. I'm not a possession. No, Min-Jun agreed. You're something far more important. You're home. The words settled over them both, profound and terrifying and absolutely true. Chioma had crossed the world looking for a place to belong, and she'd found it in the last place she'd expected, in the arms of a Mafia king who'd learned to thaw for her. Outside the study windows, Seoul glittered with evening lights. Somewhere in that sprawling city, enemies still lurked, danger still existed, threats still materialized. But in this moment, wrapped in each other, they were untouchable. What happens now? Chioma asked. Now? Min-Jun smiled, genuine and unguarded, the expression he only ever wore for her. Now we live. We build something neither of us thought possible. We prove that even in the darkest world, even with the most impossible odds, two people can find each other and refuse to let go. That sounds dangerously optimistic for you. You're a bad influence, Min-Jun said, but he was still smiling. I used to be properly cynical. And now I'm a man in love with a stubborn, brilliant woman who makes me believe that maybe, just maybe, I can be something more than the monster everyone expects. He pressed his forehead to hers. You're my greatest weakness and my greatest strength, Chioma Okonkwo. And I wouldn't change that for anything. Chioma kissed him then, deep and passionate and full of promise. Outside, the city hummed with life and danger and endless possibility. But here, in this moment, they had everything that mattered. They had each other. And in Kang Min-Jun's world, that was the most powerful weapon of all. Epilogue, 6 months later. The charity gala was Min-Jun's idea, a legitimate business venture that would help launder his image while actually doing good. Chioma had helped plan it, using her connections to bring together Seoul's elite and various embassy representatives. She stood in a stunning gown, custom designed this time, watching Min-Jun work the room with practiced charm. He'd softened in the months since they'd officially become partners in every sense of the word. Not weak, but warmer. More willing to show the human beneath the reputation. Miss Okonkwo, a familiar voice said behind her. She turned to find Kwon Dae-young, surprisingly present at the event. Mr. Kwon, I didn't expect to see you here. I'm a patron of the arts, he said dryly, and I wanted to see how our Ice King had changed. The rumors are quite entertaining. What rumors? That he smiles now, that he's been seen laughing, that he's become almost human. Kwon studied her. Your influence, I presume. I don't change people, Chioma said carefully. I just remind them of who they already were underneath everything else. Dangerous work in our world. But Kwon's expression held something like respect. You've accomplished what I thought impossible. You've made Kang Min-Jun care about something beyond power. I'm not sure whether to admire or pity you. Neither. Just acknowledge that people are more complex than the roles they play. Kwon raised his glass in a subtle toast. To complexity, then. And to the woman brave enough to love a monster. He's not a monster, Chioma corrected softly. He's just a man who forgot how to be anything else until someone reminded him. As Kwon melted back into the crowd, Min-Jun appeared at her side, slipping an arm around her waist. What did Kwon want? To tell me I've made you soft, Chioma said, smiling up at him. Impossible. I'm as ruthless as ever. But his eyes were warm as he looked at her. I just have better reasons to be strategic about when I deploy that ruthlessness. See? Soft. I'll show you soft later, Min-Jun murmured against her ear, and Chioma laughed. They moved through the gala together, the Mafia king and his unlikely queen, the monster and the woman who taught him to be human again. Around them, Seoul's elite whispered and speculated, but Chioma didn't care. There's a shipment arriving from Lagos next week, Min-Jun said without looking up from his computer. I've arranged for it to be expedited through customs. Chioma glanced at him, confused. Why would you? Because your mother mentioned in her last call that she missed certain foods from home. I had you arrange for a supplier. Min-Jun finally looked up, his expression soft in the way that was only ever directed at her. Consider it an early birthday present. My birthday isn't for 3 months. Then consider it me spoiling the woman I love. The word hung in the air between them, love. Min-Jun had never said it before, had avoided the term like it was dangerous. Which, In his world, it absolutely was. Chioma set down the papers and crossed to him, perching on the edge of his desk. You love me. Is that surprising? Min-Jun pulled her into his lap. I've rearranged my entire life around you. I've negotiated peace with enemies I'd rather destroy. I lie awake at night planning security measures and contingencies to keep you safe. If that's not love, I don't know what is. Most people just say the words, Chioma teased, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I'm not most people. Min-Jun cupped her face. I'm a man who spent years believing he couldn't afford emotions, couldn't risk attachments. And then you walked into my house with fire in your eyes and exhaustion in your bones, and you didn't see a monster. You saw me. I love you too, Chioma whispered. Even though you're terrible at expressing emotions, and you solve too many problems with violence, and you make me live in a fortress surrounded by armed guards. I'm working on the emotional expression, Min-Jun said dryly. The rest is non-negotiable. I wouldn't want you any other way. She kissed him softly. Well, maybe slightly less paranoid about security. Absolutely not. You're the most valuable thing I possess. I'm not taking chances. I'm not a possession. No, Min-Jun agreed. You're something far more important. You're home. The words settled over them both, profound and terrifying and absolutely true. Chioma had crossed the world looking for a place to belong, and she'd found it in the last place she'd expected, in the arms of a Mafia king who'd learned to thaw for her. Outside the study windows, Seoul glittered with evening lights. Somewhere in that sprawling city, enemies still lurked, danger still existed, threats still materialized. But in this moment, wrapped in each other, they were untouchable. What happens now? Chioma asked. Now! Min-Jun smiled, genuine and unguarded, the expression he only ever wore for her. Now we live. We build something neither of us thought possible. We prove that even in the darkest world, even with the most impossible odds, two people can find each other and refuse to let go. That sounds dangerously optimistic for you. You're a bad influence, Min-Jun said, but he was still smiling. I used to be properly cynical. And now I'm a man in love with a stubborn, brilliant woman who makes me believe that maybe, just maybe, I can be something more than the monster everyone expects. He pressed his forehead to hers. You're my greatest weakness and my greatest strength, Chioma Okonkwo. And I wouldn't change that for anything. Chioma kissed him then, deep and passionate and full of promise. Outside, the city hummed with life and danger and endless possibility. But here, in this moment, they had everything that mattered. They had each other. And in Kang Min-Jun's world, that was the most powerful weapon of all. Epilogue, 6 months later. The charity gala was Min-Jun's idea, a legitimate business venture that would help launder his image while actually doing good. Chioma had helped plan it, using her connections to bring together Seoul's elite and various embassy representatives. She stood in a stunning gown, custom designed this time, watching Min-Jun work the room with practiced charm. He'd softened in the months since they'd officially become partners in every sense of the word. Not weak, but warmer. More willing to show the human beneath the reputation. Miss Okonkwo, a familiar voice said behind her. She turned to find Kwon Dae-young, surprisingly present at the event. Mr. Kwon, I didn't expect to see you here. I'm a patron of the arts, he said dryly, and I wanted to see how our Ice King had changed. The rumors are quite entertaining. What rumors? That he smiles now, that he's been seen laughing, that he's become almost human. Kwon studied her. Your influence, I presume. I don't change people, Chioma said carefully. I just remind them of who they already were underneath everything else. Dangerous work in our world. But Kwon's expression held something like respect. You've accomplished what I thought impossible. You've made Kang Min-Jun care about something beyond power. I'm not sure whether to admire or pity you. Neither. Just acknowledge that people are more complex than the roles they play. Kwon raised his glass in a subtle toast. To complexity, then, and to the woman brave enough to love a monster. He's not a monster, Chioma corrected softly. He's just a man who forgot how to be anything else until someone reminded him. As Kwon melted back into the crowd, Min-Jun appeared at her side, slipping an arm around her waist. What did Kwon want? To tell me I've made you soft, Chioma said, smiling up at him. Impossible. I'm as ruthless as ever. But his eyes were warm as he looked at her. I just have better reasons to be strategic about when I deploy that ruthlessness. See? Soft. I'll show you soft later, Min-Jun murmured against her ear, and Chioma laughed. They moved through the gala together, the Mafia king and his unlikely queen, the monster and the woman who taught him to be human again. Around them, Seoul's elite whispered and speculated, but Chioma didn't care. She crossed the world, survived impossible odds, and found love in the last place she'd expected. She'd taken a job cleaning houses and ended up changing the heart of the most powerful criminal in Seoul. It wasn't the story she planned, but it was hers, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. As the evening wound down, Min-Jun led her out to the garden, private, guarded theirs. I have something for you, he said, suddenly looking almost nervous. You've given me everything already. The dresses, the apartment, your mother's jade bracelet. Not this. Min-Jun pulled a small box from his pocket, and Chioma's breath caught. Min-Jun, I know we haven't discussed this. I know it's fast by normal standards. He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, emerald and diamonds, unique and bold. But nothing about us has been normal from the start. You walked into my life and changed everything, and I don't want to spend another day without making it official. You want to marry me? Chioma's voice came out barely above a whisper. I want to bind you to me in every way possible, legally, socially, irrevocably. Min-Jun took her hand. I want the world to know that you're mine and I'm yours. I want to build a life that's more than just survival and strategy. I want everything with you, Chioma. If you'll have me. You're a mafia boss, she said, but she was smiling through tears. You've killed people. You operate outside the law. Your world is dangerous and violent and completely insane. Is that a no? That's a yes, you impossible man. Chioma threw her arms around him. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll be your partner in crime, literally and figuratively. Yes, I'll spend the rest of my life reminding you that you're more than just the Ice King everyone fears. Min-Jun slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her with the fierce joy of a man who'd never believed he could have this love, partnership, a future that held more than just power and loneliness. When they broke apart, he kept her close, his forehead resting against hers. I was dead before you, he whispered, just going through motions, building an empire but never really living. You brought me back to life. We brought each other back, Chioma corrected. I was drowning before you, exhausted, hopeless, running on fumes. You gave me purpose, partnership, a place to belong. Then we saved each other. Yes, she agreed. We did. They stood in the garden as Seoul sparkled around them, the city that had brought them together, the world that had tried to keep them apart, the future they would build together despite every obstacle. Kang Min-Jun, the Mafia king who never opened his heart, had finally let someone in. And Chioma Okonkwo, the girl who'd survived on stubbornness and hope, had found her home in the most unexpected place. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they were everything. The end. Author's note: thank you for following Chioma and Min-Jun's story from the beginning. Their journey from employer-employee to partners to soulmates has been one of my favorite stories to write. If you love this conclusion, please like this video. To support the channel, subscribe for more romance stories featuring diverse characters. Comment with your favorite moment from part 2. Share with friends who love unconventional romance. Up next on the channel, another thrilling romance series starting next week. Special thanks to all of you who commented on part 1 with your theories and predictions. So many of you called the proposal. You're all hopeless romantics, and I love it. Until the next story, remember, love finds us in the most unexpected places with the most unexpected people. Sometimes the person who seems most dangerous is actually the safest place to fall.